The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
All righty, got Tony on a Thursday as he juggles his schedule from time to time. So Thursday Tony show coming up at 11 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, I want to go through a spectacular column from Candace Buckner, who for a number of years was the beat reporter for the Wizards. She knows what she's talking about, but in this case, she really knows how to skewer Ted Leonsis for something that I've been wondering about for a while. I have sat down to watch Wizards games early and have come across the propaganda campaign that Ted and his son and the people who work for them are doing to try and convince us this is going to be a great thing to have the Wizards and Caps move to Virginia. As Candace writes in the column, she says, lately you may have flipped to Monumental Sports Network preparing to watch the tip-off of a Washington Wizards game. Your mind turned off, placing you in an emotional state, registering somewhere between comatose and could not care less, which is the only way to take in Wizards basketball these days. And she's 100% right about that. And I'll go through the point she makes about this propaganda campaign and what a bunch of crapola it is. But in terms of watching the games, I did watch a lot of last night's game, and I thought, wow, okay, finally they're going to win a game. I mean, even the worst teams find a way to win. They won 9 this year, so okay. And they've lost and won against Detroit, which right now, at least for the moment, doesn't have the worst record in the NBA. That's the Wizards at 9-53. But they were up 21 on an Orlando team that was playing back-to-back, and as Glenn Consor said, the legs are heavy for Orlando. This is your chance. You're up 21. They were up, I think, 12-13 at the half, and they got outscored in the third quarter 31-18. I mean, you knew the rush was coming, and they were totally unprepared for that. And in the fourth quarter, when they're trying to get back in it, they missed 13 straight shots down the stretch. It's just an embarrassment of a product. And I know, look, I know you got to tank to get good. This is part of the process in the NBA that you got to be really bad to get good. But this is just a complete joke of a team right now. And they're not competitive whatsoever. They got Charlotte coming in tomorrow night. At 9-53. So what are you talking now? You played 62 games, right? 62 games. So you got another 20 to go. So the low for a season is 19. In half those games, in half of them to be able to at least equal what they've done, and to top it, you got to win 11 of 20 when they're 9-53. God's sakes, this is going to be the worst season they've ever had, and the lowest win total for a full season. They've had seasons where teams have won, I think, 7. But the Philadelphia 76ers, who I remember watching that team, and aside from Fred Mad Dog Carter, they didn't have NBA players. They had a few over-the-hill guys and guys who were, barely NBA guys. Billy Cunningham had retired the year before. It was a terrible team, and they won 9 games that year. Hal Greer, great player, but he was totally cooked at that point. That was his last year in the league. This Wizards team has an opportunity to match that if they lose out. I don't think that's going to happen, but you watch them play, even when they're playing well, as they did for a half last night, they can't find a way to win. And they had, Kyle Kuzma, 25 points, Jordan Poole, who now comes off the bench, he had 26. But, they're just not competitive. Orlando's a good team. They're a first-place team. Understand that. But you figured because they're on a back-to-back, this is an opportunity to steal one. And they didn't. They found a way to completely collapse in the third quarter of that game. We talk a lot about instant replay. And I have a buddy, Zabe, did radio with him for many years, and he has always stood on the platform of do away with instant replay. You can't get it right, so just get rid of it. Okay, and I've said you can't really do that because you're going to be in a situation where it means a team either wins a Super Bowl or even gets to a Super Bowl, and there's a bad call that can't be overturned by replay. And he says, well, that's, the cost of doing business. Well, just an example of why this wouldn't work. And this goes to a high school game that was played the other night, a New Jersey high school game in which it was a Group 2 semifinal, a game against Camden, Manasquan High School. And here's what unfolded. There was a shot that was put up that was initially ruled good, a buzzer-beating shot to win the game. And then the referees huddled up, and they decided that the shot was not launched in time. And the team that should have won the game didn't win the game when it was revealed on replay. In fact, the shot was put up in time. And so the New Jersey State Interscholastic Athletic Association did admit the mistake yesterday. And they said the ruling on the court exclusively and by rule is what determines the game winner. And they say that you just cannot use video. No video or audio recording may be used to review or challenge the decision of a sports official. This is high school. It's funny, they've been using instant replay in the Little League World Series because that's a big, midsummer filler for ESPN, and they don't pay much in rights, so they make money off it. But you can't use it in a high school game. And here's what happened. Camden erased a 17-point deficit in the second half, including a 12-0 run in the fourth quarter. Then a kid sank a couple of foul shots, and Camden was up 46-45 with 5 seconds left in regulation. And that's when the controversy began. Manasquan rushed down the court for a long shot that rebounded right to a player who sank the putback and touched off a celebration for his team. But the officials ruled that the basket came after the buzzer and declared Camden the winner. They've had guys like Milt Wagner, and I think Milt Wagner's son also went to the NBA. That's been a big-time basketball program in New Jersey. But in this particular case, Camden should not have won the game. Video replays showed that the shot did leave the Manasquan player's hands in time. Now, this could be a life lesson. This could be something that Manasquan says to its players. Yeah, it's unfair, but you guys are 16, 17, maybe 18 years old, and you're going to find out through life that things aren't fair. No, they're not through with this. And this is their statement, what they put out yesterday after the New Jersey State Athletic Commission looked at this, and they said, here, all the events happened within the final second of the game. One of the three officials counted the basket as beating the buzzer. The three officials then met at half to confer. A second official saw the ball in the shooter's hands when the buzzer sounded. The officials then waved off the basket. Later, after being shown video clips, the second official agreed that the basket should have counted. That said, the rules are clear. Once game officials leave the visual confines of the playing court, the game is concluded, the score is official. So while the officiating crew's report indicate that a post-game review of footage of play in question convinced them that the basket should have counted, the results could not be changed. That's the position of the New Jersey Athletic State Commission. The Manasquan School District released a statement, where else but on Twitter, and they said, we appreciate the transparency in admitting the error and calling last night's game and appreciate their apology. It is indeed frustrating, however, that the Athletic Commission refuses to exercise its discretion to remedy the situation that was so obvious and well documented. Okay, that's a little bit of kvetching there, and maybe it stops there, but it doesn't. In our unwavering support of our players, coaches, and families, the district will continue to pursue any available appeals that we can to vindicate the values of fair play and integrity that should be the hallmarks of interscholastic athletics. Well, if you really want to teach a life lesson, you have to say to your kids, yeah, you should have won the game. And I'm really sorry that Manasquan didn't beat Camden here. But this is how the rules are set up. We have officials who are paid to officiate the game, and they concluded that the shot did not get off in time. And under those rules, that's how the game was decided, and you got to move on with your life and have some satisfaction that you could have won the game, but because of the rules that were in place at this time, they can't be overturned. The final decision can't be overturned, and you just live with that. But now they're going to sue. Well, good luck. Good luck with that, but I just don't think it's going to work. But the larger point for me is, here's a high school game, and you had a wrong call here that decided a team that a game that could have ultimately led the winning team to win the state championship, and they didn't. And we've had egregious calls in the history of baseball, the Don Deckinger call in the World Series, the Angel, is it Hernandez? I forget the pitcher for the Tigers who should have gotten a perfect game, and it was a terrible call at first base, and he settled for a one-hitter and didn't complain about it, and that was his one moment in the sun, and he did not complain about being cheated out of a perfect game. Things happen. It's an imperfect science. But, again, with these kind of things, you're never going to see the NFL or Major League Baseball or even the NBA or college basketball now get rid of instant replay. The toothpaste is out of the tube, and you're not going to put it back in. All right, some more draft yak. This is kind of what we do now between the end of the Super Bowl and the upcoming draft next month. What are the Commanders going to do at number 2? Ron Rivera shopped around for a coaching job after he was fired by the Commanders in January, and I guess he couldn't find anything as a defensive coordinator. I think he got interviews with at least a couple of teams, didn't get jobs. So now he's on to TV, and he's on to ESPN, where yesterday there was draft speculation. What are the Commanders going to do at number 2? And it's not so much his answer as to who he thinks they're going to take, but it's who he doesn't mention in this 55-second answer on who he thinks the Commanders will be drafting if they stay at 2.
The big thing, more so than anything else, that you have to look at is the style of offense they're going to run, though. You've got Cliff Kingsbury, again, a guy that likes the mobile quarterback, a quarterback that can move in the pocket, that can make the plays when they're downfield and throw the football. I think the big thing is you've got to have a mobile quarterback. So I really do think that's going to be, one of these.
Who would that be, Coach, of these?
Well, Jaden Daniels, just because of the fact that, everybody expects Caleb to go first. Mm-hmm. And so to me, if this is the style of offense you're going to have, you've got to have that type of quarterback, a guy that can, again, move around in the pocket, hold on to the football, find guys downfield, and just send it downfield to make guys make plays.
Does his slight frame concern you?
Not necessarily, because he is a big guy. He's going to add a little bit of weight again. Mm-hmm. I think he's the kind of guy, though, that will fit what Cliff Kingsbury wants to do.
Ron Rivera predicting that the Commanders will take Jaden Daniels number 2. Hardly a hot take. That seems to be the consensus coming out of the Combine, that if he's there at 2, that's the player they're going to take. What's interesting is, in that answer, you do not hear the name Sam Howell, because as Adam Schefter has outlined, everything is on the table for the Commanders. Could they bring in a veteran guy to kind of mentor Sam Howell, bring him along further? What Rivera is saying there sounds like, by not saying his name, that they're through with Sam Howell, that he's out of the picture right now. Because, this a year ago, Ron Rivera was saying, we think we got a guy here. We may have struck gold here with this 5th-round pick, and he was terrific in that game against Dallas to end the season, and we're going to try and build around him, and we're going to see the development of Sam Howell, and as Sam Howell develops, the team develops. It's done. It's over. I mean, not that he's the final word on that, but I would have thought that he would have thrown in the possibility that they can still rehab Sam Howell and, maybe even bring back a Jacoby Brissett to help do that and spend your draft capital someplace else. I think it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to take a quarterback, and whether they move up to number 1 to take Caleb Williams or they stay at 2 and take what's left. And it's not 100% that the Bears are going to take Caleb Williams, because everybody seems to be falling in love with Jaden Daniels right now. But I would be shocked if they don't take a quarterback in the draft and take one of the 3, whether it's Daniels, May, or Caleb Williams, if he happens to fall there. Now, here's something else from yesterday regarding the same topic. The lack of real understanding about how things stand with new ownership. Because Rich Eisen yesterday had Mike Wilbon on his show. And Wilbon's local, and Wilbon has a pretty good understanding of this. He also understands Chicago since he spends like half his time there. But you listen to this. It's Eisen's contention that Washington would greatly help itself by taking a local player, Well, it didn't work out with Dwayne Haskins, tragically. It did not work out with Chase Young. And so to take Caleb Williams, partly because he played at Gonzaga, partly because he's local and he's a homegrown hero, Eisen thinks it would be a real win for the organization. I think real fans here don't think that's the case. They just want to get a good quarterback, and they don't want to see another situation where there's father interference, there's distractions from playing at home and all your friends bothering you for various things. Although, to start this little topic here, Eisen has a pretty good analogy for the Commanders as he asks Wilbon about the possibility of Caleb Williams coming here.
Dorothy's house fell on Dan Snyder, and there's a yellow brick road that could be paved just one spot up and have the hometown kid. And what better way to continue to communicate to the fan base that we get it? We get it,
and we're different. This is not Dan Snyder's team franchise. And that paved road, that yellow brick road, goes right through. It could, if they wanted to, go right through Gonzaga High School. And by the way, Rich, as you mentioned, if we bring up now the Washington, I know the Washington owners personally. Friends with a couple, good friends. I know how ambitious yet sort of civic-minded. I mean, a couple of these guys are really dedicated locally. And while they haven't necessarily lived here all the time, they're of here. Now, so is Dan Snyder, to be fair. But these guys are of here. They're of Washington. And they sit around now dreaming how to do this differently, dreaming of how plotting how to do this. And I've had some dinners and some breakfasts, and I'm around them socially, and I talk to them occasionally, not all the time, but enough to know these aren't lightweight dudes. There was a story in the Washington Post yesterday, it's still on my nightstand because I didn't get to it last night, about just this thing. Kevin Blackistone wrote it, maybe it was 2 days ago, but it was talking about Washington getting a hometown hero, which has evaded Washington in every sport. Now, it's less likely to happen in hockey, in the NHL. It's not a hockey hotbed for junior play. But, we never got Grant Hill. We didn't get Kevin Durant here, Washingtonians. And so here's a chance. I'm just saying. So if these guys, as dedicated as they are, whose reach, determination, and resources, I do not doubt for a nanosecond, if they decide, and this is just one scenario relating back to your question. So do I know that this is decided at Hallis Hall? Hell no, I don't know that it's decided. And I don't believe 90% of the people who say they know it's decided either.
All right, that's Mike Wilbon, obviously, with Rich Eisen yesterday on the idea that maybe they move up and take Caleb Williams. Couple things. First of all, Wilbon name-dropping without dropping names, which is really skillful. We know he's good friends with Magic Johnson. Magic's one of the co-owners there. I assume through Magic he's met Josh Harris, and maybe that's a friend. Maybe Mitch Rails also, and Mark Ein, who's an owner as well, one of the partners. But and Wilbon also has another connection here too. His son goes to Gonzaga, so he actually knows the family. He knows the Caleb Williams family too. So there's that. But Eisen assuming that people in Washington would get very excited for Caleb Williams because he played at Gonzaga High School and because he's from Bowie, I don't think is on point there. I think we've seen this too many times where they've valued marketing over skill or over what's best for the organization, and this would not be as welcomed as he might see it. Now, that's a really good analogy that he has, that Dorothy's house fell on Dan Snyder. That's good and that's funny, but that's not what this is all about. So I don't think that's a big deal. Now, if Caleb Williams had played, let's say, at Maryland and he won the Heisman Trophy, yeah, it might be different. But how many people, relatively speaking, ever saw him play at Gonzaga? They know about him. They know he was a great player there. They know he went to Oklahoma and was great there, and then he went to USC and won the Heisman Trophy. But this jumping to, oh, he's local, let's get him. People will get excited. He's our own. Nah, it really, especially with this team, doesn't work that way. I think it would have worked with Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant was a guy, I think, who would have been greatly welcomed here, but he understood the whole picture. He said he didn't want to play here. He knew about the distractions. So I don't think the enthusiasm that Eisen is showing and Wilbon kind of jumping on board with that is really something that people here would get too excited about. I think be kind of nervous about it if you want to know the truth. Meantime, we got a couple of nuggets from the Commanders yesterday. Number one, you remember the Players Association survey that came out last week, and they ranked the team trainers 31st in the NFL. They have hired Tim McGrath to oversee the team's trainers and player wellness programs. Now, they haven't fired the training staff, but this could maybe pave the way for that, or maybe he looks at the people there and says they're fine. They just need a few improvements. But he's got 20 years of professional experience, most recently working with the Cronulla Sharks of the National Rugby League in Australia. Well, they play without pads there, so you got training stuff that you have to be worried about. And he's actually been a consultant since the end of last season. So in his new role, he will run the training room, strength and conditioning programs, oversee the team's nutritionist and sports science programs. Based on the report card from the NFL Players Association, there's a lot to do. They gave the trainers an F, and in the report, only 52% of Commanders said they received enough one-on-one treatment from the training staff. The training room received an F-, ranking last in the NFL, so he's going to clean that up. The other thing that happened yesterday, Zach Ertz was signed. And if they were getting Zach Ertz, who played 9 years in Philadelphia, this would be cause for celebration because he was tremendous, especially against Washington. He seemed to have his best games playing the Redskins, Washington football team. I don't think he played a game against the Commanders because he was released last year, but maybe he did play in that opening game here that they opened the season with. But anyway, he was cut last season. He had like 27 catches, and he does have history with Cliff Kingsbury, played with him for 3 years, but he has not played a full season in 5 years. I mean, he's had a lot of injuries, and, I don't know what's left in the tank at the age of 33, but this is the kind of move. And it's too early to be critical. So the honeymoon's still on for the new coaching staff because they haven't coached a game yet. But bringing in name players who may be finished is a move that we saw so many times here over the years. You hope it's not that. It's not a lot of money. It's a one-year deal worth $5 million. But we'll see. I mean, is he better than Logan Thomas? He might be. Thomas, I think, was due to make the same kind of money, or maybe he had the last year of his contract and they just decided they didn't want to invest in him again long term. I don't know, but it's not a big deal. It's not a lot of money. It's just that these are the kind of things that we used to see here for so long, and maybe this one works out. Maybe there's the kind of connection that Kingsbury wants with a player who played for him, and maybe they can recreate some kind of something here with whoever is going to play quarterback for them. Meantime, how about the thought that they would bring in Russell Wilson this year, 2 years after they hotly pursued him. They wanted him badly, and they settled for Carson Wentz, who turned out to be a disaster, and it turned out to be a major disaster for Denver in signing Russell Wilson. They gave up a bunch of draft picks and $124 million of mostly disappointing play for 2 years. And Josh Dubow of the Associated Press looked at some of the worst deals that have been made in NFL history. The Browns, the jury's still out on that. They gave up 3 first-round picks and 3 lower picks to get Deshaun Watson from Houston, plus they gave him the 5-year, $230 million contract, which is guaranteed. All the money is guaranteed on that. So as we look in comparison to this Russell Wilson deal, which blew up in the face of the Broncos, we look at deals that were made in the past that looked in retrospect, horrible, and probably the worst one ever for the Minnesota Vikings and the best ever by far for the Dallas Cowboys, because it set them up for 3 Super Bowl championships, is when they traded Herschel Walker to the Minnesota Vikings for 5 role players and picks in the first, second, and sixth rounds of the 1990 draft. Then Jimmy Johnson, who made the deal, negotiated terms that gave Dallas 2 additional first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a third-round pick if they got rid of the players that they picked up. I mean, you talk about sleight of hand. He's taking these players off of Minnesota's hands, and Minnesota says, well, if you keep them, you don't give up draft picks. And Johnson had no intention of keeping him. He cut him. He got the draft picks from Minnesota, and those draft picks helped him to get Emmitt Smith, Darren Woodson, Russell Maryland, and Kevin Smith, all who contributed to the 3 Super Bowl championships. Herschel actually got off to a pretty good start in Minnesota, and Wilbon, who was covering the NFL at that time, wrote a column saying, hey, looks like the Vikings pulled a fast one on the Cowboys. They got the missing piece to win a Super Bowl, which they did not with Herschel Walker. And Herschel was a good, not Hall of Fame player. Coming out of college, we thought, man, this is the next, combination of Gale Sayers and Jim Brown. And he was good, and he played a long time. He just wasn't that good. The Russell Wilson deal, as we mentioned, the Broncos gave him a 5-year, $245 million extension. And to get him from Seattle, they gave up 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, a 5th-rounder, and 3 players for Wilson and a 4th-round pick. So we saw how all of that worked out. O.J. Simpson traded to the San Francisco 49ers at the end of his career. He had the great career with the Buffalo Bills. San Francisco gave up 5 draft picks to Buffalo in 1978. This was the year before Bill Walsh arrived. Walsh was coaching at Stanford, and he did not have any say over this, but this deal was made. And O.J. was 31. He's coming off knee surgery, and really over 2 years didn't do much for the 49ers. Rushed for just over 1,000 yards combined for the 2 years. Buffalo got 2 second-round picks, 1 third-round pick, 1 4th-rounder, and a 1st-round pick in 1979 that turned out to be the number 1 overall selection when the Niners had the worst record in the league in 1978. I think Buffalo took Bruce Smith in 78, not 79, but they also had the number 1 in 79. Brett Favre traded from Atlanta to Green Bay. People forget that he was drafted by the Falcons in the 2nd round. Jerry Glanville didn't like him. The few times he played, he didn't do much. He threw a pick 6 against Washington in garbage time when they put him in. I think that might have been the playoff game too. And as he mentioned, he had some problems with alcohol and staying out late and not taking care of himself in Atlanta. But he goes to Green Bay for a 1st-round pick, and the rest, as they say, is history. 3 MVPs, a Super Bowl championship, 71,000 yards passing, 508 touchdowns. What did the Falcons do with the number 1 pick that they got from Green Bay? They drafted Tony Smith, who ran for 329 career yards. San Francisco, as much credit as they get for taking Brock Purdy in the 7th round and getting to the Super Bowl this year, they got Trey Lance in a deal to move up. They packaged the number 12 overall pick, 2 future 1st-rounders, and a 3rd-rounder to get up to 3, where they took Trey Lance, who hadn't played much at North Dakota State, and he did get the starting job in 2022, broke his leg. San Francisco dealt him to Dallas last summer for a 4th-round pick, and he was 3rd string there. The Ricky Williams trade, that was you remember what followed there? That was Mike Ditka on the cover of ESPN, the magazine, with Ricky Williams wearing a wedding dress. And that was Ditka trading basically his entire draft of 1999 plus 1st and 3rd rounders the following year to move up just 7 spots to take Ricky Williams number 5. He lasted 3 years with the Saints. Washington got 8 picks, including the number 2 overall selection, which they used on LeVar Arrington. And if they were an actual organization instead of a mess that was brewing at that point, because remember, this was the first year of Dan Snyder, but Snyder had not yet taken over yet. So Charlie Casserly just fleeced Mike Ditka, because they had no intention of taking Ricky Williams, and he got just a haul out of that. And if they had any kind of sense, they either would have kept Charlie or they would have hired a competent general manager, not Vinny, and frittered all that away. As it turned out, that was really kind of the last act for Charlie because he got pushed out the door just before training camp that year. That's when Snyder wanted to promote Vinny ahead of him, and Charlie said, the hell with this, and he resigned. And then one of the players that they got in that draft haul, they moved back up to get Champ Bailey, who turned out to be a Hall of Fame cornerback. They traded him to the Denver Broncos for Clinton Portis. Now, Clinton was good here, 4 seasons with at least 1,000 yards, but Champ Bailey, Hall of Fame, at a position that's really hard to fill. And there are extenuating circumstances to that deal, including the fact that there was no intention for Champ Bailey to re-sign here. He wasn't coming back here. But even still, you could have gotten more than you got for him. You got a running back who created a lot of attention, but what did they win? They got to the one playoff game, I guess, with Clinton Portis. And then this one, which I'd forgotten about, Rick Meyer to Chicago. Remember, he had been taken number 2 in the draft in 1993. Drew Bledsoe went number 1 to the Patriots. Meyer went number 2 to Seattle. Wasn't very good there, but they did manage to get a first-round pick for him when they traded him to the Chicago Bears in 1997. The Bears dealt the number 11 overall pick, which they used to take Sean Springs, who later played here, went to Springbrook High School and Ohio State. They used that to take Sean Springs. Meyer was bad for the Bears, made 3 starts, lost the ball, and ended his tenure in Chicago with 6 interceptions and no touchdowns. I think he wound up finishing up with the Jets or somebody, but that did not work out. So years from now, when we discuss really bad trades, Herschel Walker, I think, will stay at the top of the list. But the deal that the Broncos made to get a quarterback who, really never was. A lot of his problems were masked by really good coaching, a great defense, and just the way that Russell Wilson was used in Seattle. And to think that of all the stupid things that Washington has done over the years, they were prevented because of their own stupidity from making another stupid move to get Russell Wilson. And now I don't think it's going to happen, but his name is in play to come here and be something like a bridge quarterback. Bridge quarterbacks don't usually work out. See Donovan McNabb. That was the thought process there in 2010, and that did not work whatsoever. Candace Buckner, Washington Post, lights up Ted Leonsis like a Christmas tree. We'll get to that next. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. All right, it is a Thursday, but we got a Tony Show on a Thursday today coming up at 11 o'clock. A little bit of sunshine peeking out our window here, which is a good thing. And we've got a great column today to go through, which Candace Buckner wrote about the propaganda campaign that Ted Leonsis and his minions are pushing to convince us that this is going to be a great thing if he can move his team to Virginia, and how everything will be just great for everybody once that happens. No, it's not going to be great for everybody. It's not going to be great for the district. And she does a great job of just carving him up. And speaking of carving him up, I have this story. The Iditarod is going on. That's the dog sled race in Alaska. John Saraceno used to write for USA Today, and he wrote this several years in a row. He used to call it the I Heard a Dog, and he would just tear it apart for how abusive it was to the dogs to hold this race. And it hasn't stopped the race from being run in Anchorage, Alaska, and it's going on now. But I don't think I've ever really read a sports story which involves a penalty for not gutting a moose properly. And I'll read you some of this. Iditarod officials on Wednesday imposed a 2-hour time penalty on musher Dallas Seavey for not properly gutting the moose he killed during the race earlier this week. The circumstances surrounding the death of the moose, which became tangled up with Seavey and his dog team early Monday, about 12 hours after the days-long race officially started. One dog was injured in the encounter and flown back to Alaska for care. Anchorage. If a musher kills a big game animal like a moose, caribou, or buffalo in defense of life or property during the race, rules require that they gut the animal and report it to officials at the next checkpoint. You wouldn't think in training for a competition, gutting a moose would be a big part of this, but apparently it is. Seavey is a five-time champion. He encountered the moose shortly after leaving the checkpoint. He used a handgun to shoot it and kill it about 14 miles outside the village, 1:32 a.m. on Monday. According to the panel's findings, Seavey spent about 10 minutes at the kill site and then mushed his dog team about 11 miles before camping out on a 3-hour layover. The team departed at 5:55 a.m. for the next checkpoint, arriving at 8 a.m. when Seavey reported the kill. It fell on my sled. It was sprawled on the trail, Seavey told Iditarod Insider television crew at the Finger Lake checkpoint, where he urged race officials to get the moose off the trail. I gutted it the best I could, but it was ugly. And what they determined in their investigation was the moose was not gutted properly. And so he will be facing a 2-hour penalty on his 24-hour mandatory layover. I guess has to wait for 26 hours. He was leading yesterday, the first musher to leave the checkpoint in the mining ghost town of Ophir, about 350 miles into the race after staying only 15 minutes. So we'll see what happens. They travel about 1,000 miles across 2 mountain ranges and the frozen Yukon River. About 10 days after they start, they come into the ice of Main Street and the gold rush town of Nome for the last push to the finish line. You know, the Iditarod is not on my bucket list to either spectate at or certainly not participate in. Not a big fan of cold weather, but you got to know how to gut a moose, I guess. You know, if you want to be a musher, you better know how to gut a moose. Speaking of gutting, Candace Buckner, Washington Post today, headline, Leonsis embraces a D.C. institution. Shameless spin. This is how she begins the column. The propaganda begins with a piano playing in the background, as propaganda typically does. Then the opening shot. Ted Leonsis in an office flooded by natural light that overlooks the downtown D.C. neighborhood that he's eager to leave high and dry. Then comes the spin. A shameless act of desperation from a sports media empire more bent on winning news conferences than championships. And this is what she's talking about. This is Ted in his office, the sunshine streaming in, and he's got this piano playing with a very reassuring tone, like how great this is going to be for everybody.
Sports teams have just proven that they are catalytic to the economic growth of a community.
We typically bring in 3 million people through our turnstiles annually. Those people like to spend before and after games. They like to stimulate local businesses that surround an arena complex.
All of the businesses that we believe will spring up around the arena and in the neighborhood will be providing the tax base to the city to be able to invest in education, to be able to invest in housing, and to invest in all the needs that they prioritize.
And they're talking about a new school that's going to be built there. The governor is going to use this move as a way to make a big investment in Metro, which is needed. It'll just be a big improvement. We're going to be great neighbors, and we're going to be catalytic to positive change.
Oh, hallelujah. Forget Thomas Jefferson. Look at what Ted is doing for the state of Virginia. In that spot, you also heard Ted's kid, Zach, and Monica Dixon, who is his chief developmental officer. And they're spreading the word like this is just going to be wonderful, wonderful for everybody. Now, we'll get to what it does to D.C. in a moment. More from Candace Buckner in her column. Lately, you may have flipped on to the Monumental Sports Network, preparing to watch the tip-off of a Washington Wizards game. Your mind turned off, placing you in an emotional state, registering somewhere between comatose and could not care less, which is the only way to take in Wizards basketball these days. But just when you've settled into the blissful indifference, here comes Leonsis lording over the streets that lead to the National Portrait Gallery in one of the many monumental opportunity commercials. And we'll get to a few more of those. This is the one about don't worry about the money. Oh, no. Don't worry about the cost of this. We're going to pay for this.
I know that there are always going to be concerns around public funding of arenas. We wouldn't expect the state of Virginia to be giving us a handout, and they're not. I think we've found a really, really happy partnership in the Commonwealth of Virginia, the City of Alexandria, JBG Smith, and Monumental Sports and Entertainment.
No new taxes will be paid by anyone in Alexandria or the entire Commonwealth of Virginia. Monumental will provide $400 million to start the building and construction of this great entertainment district. In addition, the City of Alexandria and the Commonwealth of Virginia will provide a loan, a bond, so that the rest of the development can proceed. What we produce on our campus in revenues will pay back that loan, pay back that bond.
We are really paying for this entire facility, and the state of Virginia is helping us to do that financing up front.
Oh, God, it's just so great. More from Candace Buckner in his column. They claim it's a win-win-win. And in parentheses, she writes, that's 3 more wins than the Wizards recorded in February. They're also 0 for March. She wrote this column before last night's debacle where they blew a 21-point lead and lost to the Magic by 10. More from her. And even D.C. gets in on this amazing deal because if Monumental has its way, the ghost town formerly known as Capital One Arena would be able to welcome Disney on Ice and host more women's sports. Insert exclamation points here. And isn't that the dream for every metropolitan city? The monumental opportunity to watch Mickey, Minnie, and Goofy skate for 4 whole nights and to cheer on the only sports team left behind the 20 games that are played through the late spring and early summer. She's talking about the Washington Mystics, who, by the way, aren't exactly drawing at their own arena in Southeast D.C. And let's face it, it's WNBA. There aren't many places that sell out, if any. So, this is a team that's averaging like 5,000 a game. And even if they double that, as she later points out, you still have a half-empty arena. More from Candace Buckner in her column. The same man responsible for anointing John Wall, Jordan Crawford, and Andre Blatch as a new Big Three, declaring that the Caps would win multiple Stanley Cups, and trying to make us believe that Bradley Beal was worth $250 million and a no-trade clause, is now selling the dream of a utopian future, one infomercial at a time. His foray into TV evangelism feels like a political ad more than anything else. All that's missing is Leonsis with his sleeves rolled up, laughing on a park bench, holding someone's baby, and surrounded by a racially diverse group of paid actors. Whew. Then we get to this. We get to the claim here. This is Zach Leonsis and his claim about how great the Caps and the Wizards have been for D.C. and how this will continue to be great as they make the move to Virginia.
Obviously, when something major like this is announced, a lot of people have questions. We are very earnest in our intention in wanting to listen to locals in Alexandria and across the DMV as to their concerns, how we might assuage them.
When we engage with the community, we do it in a lot of different ways, and that's through the Alexandria land use process, but also through listening tours, through small business roundtables, through meetings that we have with stakeholders throughout the community.
We have a number of open events across the city of Alexandria, and we have a website where everyone can provide their thoughts, their suggestions, and communicate with us about their ideas.
Oh, so don't worry. It's all going to be good. In their commercials, they claim that Capital One is drawing 3 million fans to downtown per year. As she points out, the Downtown D.C. Business Improvement District's detailed State of Downtown 2022 report says Capital One Arena drew just 1.8 million in attendance that year. Moreover, according to the report, Capital One Arena has never drawn 3 million visitors to downtown during Leonsis' tenure as owner of both the Wizards and Capitals. And I guess that would not include the 2 Jordan years. I wonder what the numbers would be for that, because the 2 Jordan years, the Wizards were owned by Abe Pollin, which would have been 2001 to 2002, and 2002 to 2003. So they were selling out every night for that. So I don't know if they got to $3 million that year, but it has never happened that under Ted Leonsis' ownership that the two teams have drawn $3 million. In fact, what they're saying for 2022 is that they drew about half of that. In another video, Monica Dixon, Monumental's chief administrative officer, brags that Virginians will pay no new taxes, with no mention of the tax on ticket sales or the millions the Commonwealth will kick in for transportation, parking, and a concert hall, to say nothing of the risk if revenue doesn't meet projections. Fudging the numbers might be one thing. Force-feeding the public the notion that moving the NHL and NBA teams to Virginia is a win-win for women is offensive, she writes. On Monday night, when the Wizards faced the Utah Jazz, Monumental Sports Network aired two of its pro-arena commercials before the tip. In the second spot, which starts with Leonsis sharing his love for D.C., Dixon boasts about Disney on Ice returning to downtown D.C., and Michael Winger, president of Monumental Basketball, appears and says with a straight face, "I think it will be great for the community, it'll be great for our team, and I think it'll be really special for women's sports." Candace Buckner writes, "This is spin, and it isn't even good spin. Last year, the Mystics averaged 4,300 fans. Let's say in 5 years the franchise can double that figure. Even so, a crowd that size would still make the downtown arena look cavernous, and Mystic fans would have to brave a Chinatown neighborhood that's already beset by business closings, even with the Caps and Wizards still in town. Without the NBA and NHL tenants, there's real fear that more retail and restaurants will move away. But if you drink enough of the Kool-Aid, you might believe that dropping the Mystics into yet another unsettled neighborhood that hosts a touring ice show a few times a year is good, great, and wonderful." As Monumental tries and fails to look like a champion for women and a catalyst for change, the company reveals itself to be tangled in its manipulation. With his monumental opportunity ad campaign, Leonsis thinks he can reshape public opinion by smiling toward a fake interviewer in a sun-drenched room. But he's proven that even the soothing sounds of a piano can't make fiction sound sincere. Way to go, Candace. Way to go. Way to expose this nonsense. And this has always been, Ted's way of doing business. Oh, I'm smart, and I'm going to show you how smart I am, and this is going to be so great for you. It's snake oil is what it is. And so if you're going to take out the Caps and the Wizards, and the Caps have won a Stanley Cup, the Wizards have been mostly bad, though they have had some playoff teams under Ted, and there has been some excitement about them. If you yank them out of D.C., and you put them in Virginia, and you tell everybody, "Oh, look what I'm doing for you, Virginia. I'm going to save your schools, and everything's going to be great because I'm bringing in all this tax revenue." You're not going to have to pay anything. I'm going to pay all that. You're going to do that, and then you're going to leave the district with 4 nights of Disney on Ice and the Mystics, and you're going to say this is just as good. We're going to continue to run our teams here and have everything just great for D.C., and we're also going to make Virginia better at the same time. Nobody buys that. And I've been in a meeting with Ted where he was threatening, this is many years ago, he was threatening to take the Caps off our station. We were the sports station and carrying the Caps games, and there was no other sports station in town. And he wanted us to talk more about this team. He even said to Zabe and me, "Hey, make fun of how fat I am. Just talk about me." And we said, well, if there's worthy to talk about you, we will. But, research shows that NFL is king. And look at the ratings. Look at what. And so he went. This was his spin. This is how Ted spins. Oh, the NFL. The NFL is just watched by 50-year-old men. And he was talking about the Capitals, we're growing, and we're showing that our audience is getting younger, and we're getting more women in it. No, Ted, it's a niche. It's the NHL. And to his credit, still, I hope he doesn't fire them like he fired Buck and Chenier, but he's got Joe Beninati and Craig Laughlin, who are two of the best in the business, and it's worth watching their games just for them. And in terms of going to the games, it's very exciting to go to a hockey game. There's no question about it. But in terms of talking about it on sports radio, it just doesn't work well unless the team is making a Stanley Cup run. There's just, in the NFL, you can dissect every play and you can talk about trades and look at how the draft sustains you for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's just a different animal. But Ted is so smart that he's going to try and convince you that the NFL is getting old and becoming obsolete. And here comes hockey because it's getting younger. Younger people like it. Stop, Ted, and stop trying to sell us a bunch of garbage with how great this is going to be when you take your teams to Virginia if they get it done. And there's real doubt whether this is actually going to happen. And boy, Candace did a great job, just a great job in filleting him today. Just like they should have been able to gut the moose properly in the Iditarod. She properly guts Ted Leonsis in this column. Coming up, the Dartmouth decision, the Dartmouth ruling in which they're allowing their basketball players to unionize. What is the long-term effect of that? Jay Billis has thoughts on it and more. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
Now, from ESPN 630, your D.C. Sports Center.
We're brought to you by NATCA, the National Air Traffic Controllers Association. They bring you home safely. At least till Detroit plays Brooklyn tonight. Wizards stand alone as the worst team in the NBA and the team with the longest losing streak at 16, which ties the franchise record set in 2010 when Gilbert Arenas destroyed the team by bringing guns in the locker room, and they had to really screw it up to get to 16 last night. Up 21 in the first half. They lost to Orlando 119-109. Charlotte's here tomorrow. College basketball this afternoon. Maryland women play Illinois in the Big Ten tournament. Tip-off 12:30. The men finish the regular season at Penn State Sunday. Football, Commanders have signed tight end Zach Ertz, who played for offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona. And the Caps are on the road tonight. They have a 7 o'clock face-off in Pittsburgh with a slim chance to make the playoffs. D.C. weather, cloudy, high 65. Andy Pollin, ESPN 630.
The Tony Kornheiser Show.
It's a terrible trade that Denver made to get Russell Wilson with Seattle. Could he go to Washington and be effective, better than the guy they got? Sure. Is he a great quarterback anymore? No.
Weekdays at 11 on ESPN 630. Sports Centers all day and night on ESPN 630 are brought to you by NATCA, the National Air Traffic Controllers Association. They guide you home safely. For more info, visit them at natca.org. That's natca.org.
Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions posted at textplan.us. Texting enrolls for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop, opt out.
Guys, let's get real about your hair loss. How long have you been wearing a hat, hiding thinning hair, or a rapidly growing bald spot? Just stop it. You're not a 12-year-old little leaguer, you're a grown man. It's time to take action. Let the hat go and get your real hair back permanently with Bosley. You heard that right. Bosley, America's #1 hair restoration experts, can give you your real hair back permanently. And right now, Bosley is giving away an absolutely free information kit and a free gift card to everyone that texts SHOW to 200-300. Plus, text right now and get a link to this month's incredible deals. Join the millions of people who come to Bosley and see just how awesome your hair could look. Text SHOW to 200-300 for your absolutely free information kit and a free $250 gift card off, plus a special link to incredible deals. Text SHOW to 200-300 now. Text SHOW to 200-300.
What's holding you back from learning the language you've always wanted to know?
Too hard.
Takes too long.
Not with Babbel. Babbel's lessons take just 15 minutes a day.
15 minutes isn't long.
Nope. And they're fun. So you don't realize you're learning a language, but you are. In 3 weeks, you're able to start having conversations. And Babbel's lessons are built around real life.
And with Babbel, it isn't hard.
It's perfect.
Now try Babbel free. Just go to Babbel.com. That's BABBEL.com.
Girls and boys in poverty around the world are dreaming of a better life, filled with dance, art, music, and knowledge. They dream of a brighter future with enough nutritious food to eat, a chance to learn and grow, to get an education, escape poverty, and do incredible things. Today, thanks to Children International and friends like you, such dreams are coming true. Together, we give children a chance to set their sights high and succeed in school and in life. by ensuring that they have access to healthcare, education, life skills, and so much more so they can grow, thrive, and believe in themselves. Learn more about Children International and join us in our life-changing work at children.org today. Together, we can help end poverty for good.
The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Second time in 2 days, hit the wrong button. That's how we open every hour, not how we come back. But okay, we are back. It is the Andy Pollin Show, and we're rolling until 11 o'clock when we got Tony. We're going to spend some time here on college sports and where they are right now. And it's like, you know, you walk past something and you say, ooh, boy, that looks like that's going to topple over soon. And that's what's going to happen with college sports. We're in a really crazy period right now, and it's ramped up quickly. You know, 3 years ago, we didn't have NIL. We had a point where the NCAA said it was okay to give an athlete a bagel, but you couldn't give him cream cheese because that was an extra benefit. And now it's just insane. It's just crazy, crazy, crazy. And contributing to this is what is ultimately going to happen in college sports, where we're going to have paid players with unions and salary structures and contracts and things like that, not this vague NIL stuff where there's just piles and piles of money being given to players and no real structure or anything like that. The NCAA allowed it to get to this because instead of trying to set up a structure, they spent all their money fighting it in court until the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. No, the players should get money. So now they get money. But we also have the Dartmouth situation, which is just scratching the surface of what is going to happen. But the Dartmouth basketball players, not a good team. It's like a 7-win team this year. But they have voted 13-2 to unionize. And they will be under the supervision of the National Labor Relations Board. And the players elected to join the Service Employees International Union Local 560, which also represents workers on campus. And that's what's ultimately going to happen, is we're going to have players in the revenue sports employed by the school, because that's what they are. They're not student athletes. They're employees of the school. But again, there's a lot of things that have to happen, and it's going to take a long time to go through the legal ramifications of this. There's some extenuating circumstances here with Dartmouth in that they're a private school, and you have now state schools which would have to, comply with this, and what that leads to. We're a long way from finding out. But Ross Dellinger's covering this for Yahoo. He was on with Dan Patrick yesterday answering the question of what does this mean for other schools?
It could be a while till we know. Right now there's an appeal from Dartmouth. It's an appeals process to the National Labor Relations Board national office in Washington, D.C. And if the appeal is upheld there, it'll probably be further appealed to federal courts. And then from there, Dan, could go to the Supreme Court. So it could be a while before we have some finality. In the meantime, the fact that a local NLRB region office deemed Dartmouth men's basketball players employees is somewhat historic and could have ramifications in the way that other players at other programs, certainly programs that make more money, right, than the Dartmouth men's basketball team, which loses hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Those players could see what Dartmouth did, right, and they could do it themselves, right? They could get together themselves and unionize collectively. So that is certainly maybe in the immediate, what we could see is more movement in college programs like this. But as far as some kind of like national edict of players or employees, it could be a while until we see that from the courts.
Because this is going to be pushed further and further and further away, like Maurice Claret was trying to come out. And by the time that was going to be heard, he was going to already be in the NFL. Northwestern, when they tried to unionize. So I don't know if Dartmouth is saying, look, this isn't going to affect us, but it could affect generations of college athletics, college athletes here. And what do you get if you would happen to be unionized in college athletics?
Well, you conceivably you'd get collective bargaining, right? So as a union, as a group of players, you would be able to bargain with your school, the employer, potentially, according to the ruling at the Boston NLRB office. So you could collectively bargain. And a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders, Dan, in college athletics, whether it be coaches, even administrators, maybe even some commissioners, have come out publicly saying that the fix to all of this, right, all of the problem that college football and basketball specifically are having, the money issue, is to collectively bargain with some kind of players association. And that's what we're heading down, right? It's a path toward a school or a conference or even a national organization like the NCAA bargaining compensation in terms and benefits with a group of athletes. College football and basketball to an extent, but especially major college football, has become such a big moneymaker that we're in this position where you're gonna start having unions or players associations for players to get direct compensation. And I think a lot of people, even when in, like I said, college athletics, thinks that's kind of the answer.
I don't think there's any other answer at this point. I mean, think of how new we are to this and how out of control this is. I'll get to what Nick Saban said yesterday in just a minute, but Jay Billis has been talking about this for years, that this is what is going to happen. You're going to have players who are employed by the school. They will sign contracts. There will be buyouts in those contracts. So if they want to leave, they can leave. And you can also fire the players. It's just like a job. If the player doesn't live up to expectation, he gets fired. He can go look for a job someplace else. That's the way it's got to work. So Jay Billis yesterday on the Pardon the Interruption show, they asked him about this, and then that segged in, because I think it ties in a little bit with what's happening with the discussion of the NCAA tournament expanding from 68 teams. So this was Billis on the Dartmouth decision, dovetailing into what's happening with the college basketball discussions right now.
I think it's another brick that's been taken out of the seemingly collapsing NCAA wall. And it may prompt other private institution teams to take the same step and unionize toward employment. I'm not sure employment is necessary, but Charlie Baker, the president of the NCAA, put out a statement after the unionization vote by the Dartmouth basketball team and said that certain of their issues they cannot deal with without help, meaning without Congress. I disagree with that. Every other American business can help itself by stopping violating federal antitrust law. It's just not that difficult. All the NCAA needs to do is take restrictions off of paying athletes and allow each institution to make their own decisions.
We'll get you out of here on this. We'll ask for a pretty brief answer if we could get one. The Athletic is reporting that the NCAA, which you just talked about, is considering growing the basketball tournament to 72 or 76 teams, partly to keep power conference teams from starting their own tournament. You can see an analogy with the SEC and the Big Ten in the football situation. Do you see this as a legitimate fear?
I do. I see it as a legitimate fear. The NCAA has to do whatever it takes to keep this together. And if the big conferences feel like they're not getting what they want, meaning more teams considered for the NCAA tournament and more access to the tournament, they could take off and start their own thing and start their own tournament, and the NCAA would cease to exist. That's a possibility. I don't think it's probable in the near future, but it's possible. I don't think they should expand the tournament, but it's not going to be the end of the world if they do. We'll consume it the same way. But I think they've got something really good here right now. It should be hard to get into. That's part of the beauty of it, in my view. And I don't look at it as a tournament that's about access. I look at it as a tournament that determines the national champion. I think it's a national championship event. But the middling teams in this big conference, they want more access. And history tells us they're going to get it.
So that's Jay Billis with really two separate issues. But there's a connection there. And the connection, obviously, is money. And the big conferences are saying, hey, we only get 6 teams in, and we want to get 8 teams in. So if you don't expand the tournament, we'll start our own. Now, what Jay said about the NCAA ceasing to exist, does it really exist now? I mean, what is it? It's nothing. It doesn't really have a lot of power. And this big contract, by the way, that they have with television for the NCAA tournament, that was not negotiated well. They got shortchanged on that, because you got a former president who was an empty suit and didn't know what he was doing, and that's how they stuck it to him. So as you move forward and you look at players getting paid, as conferences do their own thing, look at how quickly they reconfigure with nonsense like UCLA and USC going to the Big Ten. I mean, really, Stanford going to the ACC. I mean, it's just insane. And so, what stops this train from moving down the tracks as quickly as it does? Nothing happened. Nothing's stopping it, and the money is driving it. This leads us to what Nick Saban said yesterday in an interview with ESPN. Now, remember, when he retired at Alabama, he said, no, it wasn't the NIL that drove me out. We've adjusted to things in the past. It wasn't that. It was just time. He was a little bit more forthcoming in this interview that he did with, I think it was Chris Lowe yesterday on ESPN. He said, I want to make it clear that wasn't the reason, but some of those events really contributed to him leaving. He said, I was really disappointed in the way the players acted after the game. You got to win with class. You got to lose with class. We had our opportunities to win the game. We didn't do it. And then showing your ass and being frustrated and throwing helmets and doing that stuff, that's not who we are and what we've promoted in our program. He's talking about losing the game to Michigan in the Rose Bowl. Once back in Tuscaloosa, as Saban began meeting with his players, it became even more apparent to him that his message wasn't resonating like it once did. Quote, I thought we could all have a hell of a team next year. Maybe 70 to 80% of the players you talk to, they all want to know two things. What assurances do I have that I'm going to play, because they're thinking about transferring, and how much you're going to pay me? Our program here was built on how much value we can create for your future and your personal development, academic success, and graduating and developing an NFL career on the field. So I'm saying to myself, maybe this doesn't work anymore, that the goals and aspirations are just different, and that it's all about how much money I can make as a college player. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that's never been what we were all about, and it's not why we've had the success that we had through the years. Well, of course. And in the old system, that's what you were selling. You were selling the future, that you could develop your skills, get a degree, which would be a fallback just in case you don't make the NFL, because most players who go to Alabama have dreams of the NFL. It's not realistic for all of them, but they have dreams of getting there. And if you fall short, well, you've got a college degree to fall back on. That's not in the equation anymore. They're coming there to say, how much money can I make? And I know I'm good enough to make the NFL. And if I don't feel like I'm making NFL progress in your program, I'll go someplace else. And I may even make more money. Or I may make a little less money, but I'm getting closer to the NFL than I am sitting on your bench. So that's what this is all about now. And, we've seen just about all the old horses go. Rick Pitino's about the only one still hanging on. And we even have now coaches who are getting out of head coaching because of this stuff, and coaches who actually want to coach football. And I've decided that they're in order to do that, they're going to have to walk away from all this other mishigas. And if they have to take a pay cut, okay, so it's a pay cut. So they're making $6 million a year as a head coach, and they'll go someplace else for $2 million as a coordinator. They can figure out how to get by on $2 million, which leads us to Chip Kelly, who shocked a lot of people a couple of weeks ago when he said he was leaving as head coach at UCLA to become the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. What? Head coach at UCLA, major program, and now he's going to become an assistant coach under, by the way, a coach who could get fired this year if he loses again to Michigan, Ryan Day. You lose 3 straight times to Michigan and then make it 4th. That's curtains. But he goes to Ohio State from UCLA, and here's his explanation as to why. He said it began when UCLA quarterbacks coach Ryan Gunderson left the program before the team's bowl game against Boise State. And Kelly said, I actually coached the quarterbacks for the bowl game, and I started to think like I hadn't actually coached a position since 2008. And I think my wife remarked, she was like, I haven't seen you this happy in a long time. And to me, the best part of football is football. So you got to do football and not do some of the things involved with the head coaching deal, which you just heard Nick Saban outline. Even at the highest of successful programs, you can't get any more successful than Alabama, and he's dealing with that. So he's saying to himself, well, I don't want to do all this other garbage. I want to coach football. And so he said it was time after the bowl game to start ramping up recruiting. He looked on potentially being an assistant coach again. So I started to look at, is there an opportunity? And it would have had to have been the right spot to go somewhere and just coach a position again and to get back in that group. So, here's a guy who'd been a head coach since 2009, Oregon, UCLA, Eagles, 49ers. Last time he was an assistant, 2008, when he was the offensive coordinator at Oregon. So he's going back to doing something he hasn't done in 16 years. And he said, I just want to be happy, and I'm really happy coaching the position. Really happy to be at this place. Would have taken a special place for me to leave UCLA because I love those players and I love the coaching staff. But to be here with Ryan, had a great relationship. I've known Ryan since he was a little kid, so I think of a lot of things that just fell into place the right way. This is a guy who wants to be a football coach. And when you are a head football coach, now you're not a head football coach anymore. You're a guy who tries to talk his players into staying or coming and making sure that they have enough money. And if they have enough money to come, do they have enough money to stay? This is a toppling system. This is not sustainable the way this is going. And when you see two coaches of note like this, one who, yes, he's 72, but had never, 3 years ago, had never given any indication that he was walking away, and still looks like he's 52. He could coach if he wanted to, but he's telling you, it's crazy. We just played in the semifinal to get to the national championship game. We took the ultimate champion to overtime. We lost the game, and what are players talking to me after the game about? Not can we come back next year, coach, and avenge this defeat and win the national championship? No. How much playing time can I get, and how much money am I going to get? And he said, hell with this. And Chip Kelly, the same thing. Leaving a UCLA, okay, it's not Ohio State, it's not Michigan, it's not Alabama, it's not, it's not Georgia, but it's a high-profile job. And he leaves that to become an assistant coach because he just doesn't want all the other stuff. He wants to be a coach. And I think most guys who get into this decide that's what they want to do, but they're finding more and more that it's impossible to do. And how many more years will this work this way? I just don't, again, I don't think it's sustainable. All right, enough of that. I'll be back here tomorrow. Tony is next. See you at 9 a.m.